What's going on, guys? I'm here at Ron Hoover RV and Marine, and I'm here often, and a lot of people say, do these guys pay you to come out here? They don't pay me one penny. They don't even call me. Oftentimes, they don't even know I'm out here. I like to come here because I get my day started pretty early, and they open early. So, you know, the worst thing of making videos is when you show up at an RV dealership that opens 2 hours after you show up, and you can't even make it onto their lot. In the case of these folks at Ron Hoover, they open really early, so if I even try to go to another one and they're closed, I usually just drive over here and they have a pretty good selection, considering the fact that a lot of RV dealerships have nothing in stock. They are really challenged. Ron Hoover is getting stuff in just about daily, so it gives me a lot of really cool products to look at, and that's the reason why I'm here. Anyways, guys, that's not the point of this video. Let's dive into a topic that, again, it's kind of controversial, and people either love this topic or they hate it, but we're going to talk about it. I'll be right back. All right, guys, so I made a video, actually a couple videos now, talking about RVs and if they're manufactured like junk. Basically, what makes people think that RVs are junk? Well, this is going to be the third, probably not the last video on this topic, but it's one that I think is going to address things in a little bit different way. First of all, the first video, I asked the question, why do people just call RVs junk? The second video, I asked for clarification on that, mainly asking the folks who just leave that one word junk comment why they do it. Well, in this video, let's talk about some of the comments that I got in the first and second video. So a lot of people believe that RVs are junk because the manufacturers just don't care. That manufacturers are just trying to turn out whatever they can, get it out on a dealership lot and sold. You know, I can say that there's probably people in the RV manufacturing industry and that work for the different manufacturers that focus purely on that. I don't doubt that, and I see that in a lot of units. There are units that I walk through on every dealership's lot, regardless of where I've filmed, that you just see they've had issues. They're falling apart. There's a problem. There's something that had to have happened either at the factory, en route from the factory, when it got here, who knows. But, you know, when you look at it from another perspective, I don't think that that's the focus of any brand. You know, a lot of folks are like, you know, buy stuff that's built here in the U.S., buy stuff that is U.S. manufactured. Well, RVs are pretty much entirely U.S. manufactured. They're pretty much made in just a few areas of the country. And quite frankly, whenever I've toured these facilities, you know, I don't see people purposefully trying to do things the wrong way. What I see factories with hundreds of employees inside of them and a relatively quick production line. They are moving units down the line as quickly as they can while still giving workers the ability to do the specific task they need to do. The problem occurs when you have someone who didn't do the task right the first time and that unit has to continue moving down the line. Oftentimes this can be because you have an employee that's new, or because you have a piece of equipment that's just not dialed in properly. I found out that that is a huge reason why some RVs suffer from some issues. They have a clog in an airline. There is a nailer or a tack gun or something that just isn't configured or set up properly, and the actual employee using it doesn't even know it because they don't know that they're either nailing in a nail too deep or not deep enough, or they've ran out of nails, and that's actually more of a problem with an employee not paying attention. But whenever you see the factory assembly lines that these go down, you realize really quickly that if one person in that assembly line doesn't do his job right, you essentially cause a unit to continue on down the assembly line with a problem that will really only be found either by the new owner or a dealer. Maybe it's going to be found en route to a dealer. And those are all things that are things worth considering whenever you look at RVs. Sometimes everything comes together perfectly and you have a unit that has absolutely no problems. Sometimes you have a unit that has absolutely no problems. Everything came along really well. It went through PDI. The manufacturer really did a great job, but then something happens en route to a dealership. The transportation company sending it down hits a big pothole in the road or has to make some type of really crazy maneuver to go around an accident or is distracted while driving, and something happens to that unit before it makes it to the dealership lot. Sometimes you just have a really crappy unit that gets built because somebody didn't do their job right, or somebody wasn't paying attention, or a piece of equipment wasn't dialed in properly, and a unit that shouldn't have problems has tons of problems. Now, unfortunately, because these are 100% manufactured by hand, you have a higher likelihood of that occurring. You have a higher likelihood of a mixture, a sealant, an adhesive just not being prepped properly or not being prepared correctly in a way that it causes an issue later. You have areas where somebody might have been lazy and they didn't seal around a bay door, or they didn't put caulking where it needed to be. They didn't apply the roofing material correctly. It was too humid in the factory that day. There are all sorts of things. But do I believe that the general managers at these factories and the production line supervisors, do I believe they're intentionally trying to put a bad product out? I don't, because I've actually spent time talking to a lot of them, and they are all really, really proud to tell me about the things that they're doing to improve quality of units that come off their assembly line. They're all really, really anxious to talk to you about the little things that they feel they do better than others. But then again, I come out and I walk some of these units and I see problems. To give you a really great perspective of it, that Alliance unit at the very end there, beautiful unit. Alliance is probably one of the few manufacturers that really, really tries to connect with their buyers beyond what I've seen any other manufacturer do. But if you spend time looking at the units, you spend time talking to owners, you'll realize that a lot of owners have the same type of problems with their Alliance units that somebody with a Jayco unit might have. And it's important to understand that just because you get a brand that's perceived to be better doesn't always mean it's going to withstand the rigors of the road getting to where it needs to get. Now, when I walked through that unit up front, and I don't actually think it was this one, I think it was one that's not here anymore, it had a sliding door that had become detached from its actual railing, from the wall itself. So it was broken away. The trim and everything was broken off. The fire extinguisher had ripped off of the wall and was on the ground while it was being towed. The unit had just gotten here. It had not even gone through PDI, and they already had a laundry list of stuff that had to be fixed on the unit. Now, is this something that Alliance could have caught before the unit left their facility? No, I don't think it is. Mainly because any walkthrough would have caught any of those problems. Any walkthrough, any PDI would have addressed any of those problems. The real thing that occurred was something over the road. Something between the manufacturer and the dealership happened. Whether they hit a big bump, whether they had to make an aggressive maneuver or an emergency stop, something happened which caused some issues. Now, the dealership here fixed it all up because by the time I actually filmed the unit, everything was in perfect condition and they addressed all of it. But again, it did not leave the Alliance factory in that condition. It left the Alliance factory in a condition that somebody could probably just get into it and drive it away or pull it away. It was in great shape. But when it arrived at the dealership had to make some repairs to it. And that's not completely uncommon for any brand. So it's just something worth considering, worth noting, and being aware of. I believe that the industry in general should look at better utilization of adhesives, better utilization of screws and nails, and to use better products in general to make RVs structurally stronger in terms of trim, cabinetry, things like that. I do. But what I also believe is that the manufacturers are trying to put out a good product. I don't believe any one of them purposefully is going out there saying, you know what, we never want this person to buy our brand again, so let's just put out the worst product possible, so all they do is badmouth it. I don't think any company is sustainable doing that. Now, the other final interesting note about this topic is that I have folks all the time that say RVs are either too expensive or they're too cheap. And if they're too cheap, oftentimes people say, well, if you put the work and materials and labor into it that would be needed to make it, you know, this incredibly rock solid Australian designed RV, they would be cost prohibitive for most people. You couldn't afford them. But then there are the folks that say RVs are too expensive. Now, what I believe is that the RV manufacturing industry really needs to revamp how they price their units, because I don't like the fact that you can go to one unit like Ron Hoover here and you can get your typical 25-30% off of a unit. But then if you don't go here and you go to another place that sells the exact same model, you might not be able to get that discount, or the discount might be greater simply because you went to a different dealership. I think it's important that they come up with a way of pricing units that's more uniform across the board. I can't honestly say the manufacturers themselves are trying to price gouge simply because so many manufacturers have gone out of business. even manufacturers that are incredibly reputable. If you talk to folks who have this brand of fifth wheel or RV from 20 years ago and they say, man, why did this company go out of business? They built such great units. Well, you've kind of answered your own question. Oftentimes, the manufacturers who have put so much money and time investing in building the #1 best unit have had to raise the price so high that they just don't sell the quantity that they need to stay afloat. And that's a challenge. So finding that perfect spot between an expensive unit, a cheap unit, right in the middle that gets the manufacturer the money they need to stay afloat, as well as dealerships the money they need to get paid and to pay their sales folks and keep their doors open, is always kind of touchy. And it's one that I think they're constantly trying to work on and evaluate. Again, I do not give a pass to any manufacturer who allows junk to roll off their assembly line. But again, I also don't think that manufacturers are purposely trying to roll junk off their assembly line. I think it happens. And I think that in any business, you have lazy employees at times. You have employees that just don't do their job very well. Most of the time, I think employees do their job the way they've been trained time and time again. And sometimes it's an equipment issue. But at the end of the day, I would probably say that there is a focus on quality. There is a focus on trying to get something out that's good. There are so many question marks once the unit leaves their facility, and there's so many question marks that take place during the production that are sometimes hard to catch. I do think there needs to be improvement, and hopefully all the manufacturers are always looking to improve. But you should always deal with the manufacturer, deal with the dealership that has a good reputation, and I think that that's also key. Anyways, guys, if you haven't had a chance, please take a moment, subscribe to my channel, give me a thumbs up, and we'll talk to you again very soon.